Any questions after today's practice?
Sean, do you have a different appreciation for how difficult it is to get to this point in the season now than 2006 when you guys were able to do it in the first year?
Yeah, look, a lot goes into it. Obviously, you have to play good football. We just finished talking about, as you set your goals to start the season, you start with trying to win your division. The second goal being, get the best seed possible. And obviously it's a long season, so yeah, to get to these games, or as a coach, this is my fourth one, and you recognize the journey is, there's a lot that goes into it.
How has your relationship with Drew Brees evolved since the last time you guys went to that NFC Championship game?
Man, it was 09, it was 06. Honestly, when I get asked that question relative to his age or our age, it feels like maybe 7 or 8 years, not necessarily 13 years. So there's always a change relative to what we're doing offensively that involves, who we're doing it with. So as personnel has changed from the 06 team to the 9 team, each year there's new pieces. There's guys that have left, and certainly you evolve offensively. His preparation, how we game plan, all of those things, though, would be pretty constant.
Sean, how different is this Rams team from the one you played back in?
Man, they're playing real good football. They've had a great season. Last week was an impressive win, a real impressive win considering the opponent in Dallas. All year long, we felt like was one of the top defenses, and those guys did a real good job in that game. Defensively, they did a good job. They've always been at the top in our league in the kicking game. John Fossil, I remember John when he was one of our ball boys at the Giants. He's Jim's son. He's been fantastic for him. So, be a great challenge. Be a real good atmosphere, a good environment, and two good football teams.
Coach, you're mentioning the differences from the last time you faced them. Obviously, the backfield was also different with C.J. Anderson there.
Yeah.
How impressed were you?
Listen, I think he's been a great addition. Man, he's come in there, and he had a fantastic game last week. He's a physical runner. If he gets into your second level of your defense, is a tough guy to tackle. So when you partner him, obviously with Gurley, those guys look real good last week.
People often talk about how you need to be able to run the ball or stop the run at this point in the season. How much do you think your run defense has really altered the makeup of this team?
Well, I think it's important. One of the challenging things defensively is if you have trouble stopping the run, there's a lot of other things that open up offensively. It's tough to rush the passer then. Your first down and second down efficiency becomes that much better. Obviously, if you're running the ball well, third downs become more favorable for the offense. So there's a lot that goes into that. Time of possession swings in the favor of, the team that is efficient there. And so, I think that's been real important, and we'll get tested in this game for sure.
Sean, what's the benefit for you calling your own plays, and is there something you have to give up in order to do that?
Yeah, there's a give and take with it. I'm sure we're a little longer in our offensive meetings because you're pulled occasionally away from it. Look, the benefit, it's easier when the buck stops with you to call what your gut tells you to call. And I've been a coordinator and not the head coach and call plays, and you're wanting to manage the game, and so look, I enjoy doing it, and will I do it forever? Probably not. And Pete's done a fantastic job when he's done it. Back in 2011 was the first time I didn't, and I think we had 600 yards offense and 50-some points, so Pete did a pretty good job. But it's a process, though. It's not just, it's tonight late, it's tomorrow night late, where you're really looking at what you're wanting to get to and putting the categories together, and And so there are a lot of those decisions that are made during the week that you get to on game day.
Sean,
Sean,
factors.
we hear Alvin talk about playing with pace across the parking lot in basketball. Do you think I heard you say tempo a lot. Do you think that can affect a football game offensively? Both of these teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, the team we're playing, LA, has great tempo. They give you up to the line quick count. They give you up to the line shift, sit in there, change your play. So you get a number of different looks. And I said this before, the late Jim Johnson, who was at the Eagles and probably one of the better defensive coordinators that our league has seen, he always felt that type of thing, along with shifts and motions, were the offense's way to blitz the defense. And so I think tempo is important, whether it's on and off the field with your personnel groups, and then certainly the ability to go on a quicker cadence, a slower cadence. The good thing is we're at home, and so that's a significant advantage relative to the communication.
Sean, how do you guys replicate what you were able to do to Aaron Donald last time around? You guys kept him in check, and he's blown up a lot of games.
Well, I just finished watching the cut-up, so part of that's a credit to Drew. There were some near explosive hits. It's hard to say you're going to keep him in check. He's played as well at that three technique position that we've seen in years. I mean, arguably, and I don't know if it's even an argument, that he's the best defensive player today in football, and his numbers, his production, it shows up in the run game, it shows up in the passing game, and it's a challenge.
Sean, I think you all brought Goff in for, I guess, an interview or a meeting here before the draft. Was that correct?
Yeah.
What are your memories of him, obviously?
Well, he's sharp. Listen, we had a chance to coach him in the Pro Bowl. He's a fantastic guy. Someone that is a pleasure to be around. He's smart. He's extremely talented. When you're around those guys at that game, and you just, Whitworth, all of those guys. There's a number of coaches on that staff that we're close with, that either worked here, we know well, and we have great respect for.
Sean, how much of a difference is it with Talib in the lineup? He didn't play last time.
Yeah, I think, look, he's helped them a bunch. I mean, number one, he's an extremely smart player, and he's played in countless postseason games. So clearly, you want your starters healthy and ready to play, and I'm sure that's the case with him.
Sean, with a small amount of time, when you're talking about 4th and 1, 4th and 2, what goes into that decision making of we will here, we won't here?
Where you're at in the game, field position. How's the game, going? There's a handful of things relative to a decision like that, where you're at on the field, and then what type of game you feel like you're in. That can vary. And sometimes, we spend a lot of time with the numbers, and yet, sometimes it's your gut as well.
Sean, would you say you're more of a chicken and andouille or seafood gumbo kind of guy?
Next question.
Sean, what do you feel like?
I don't like seafood.
I
know where you're going.
Sean, what do you feel like is the explanation for the offensive trend in the game of the last 4 or 5 years, the top teams in the league being a lot of times some of the best offenses?
Well, listen, I think the teams are playing good offense and good defense. I mean, what makes a good team? It's not just one side of the ball or the other, and obviously you have to have good quarterback play. I think we talked about defending the run. It's hard to get to where we're at now, being one-dimensional or just. And I think when you look at the teams right now that are playing, what Kansas City did to Indianapolis last week defensively was real impressive. I mean, considering what we had seen from Indianapolis offensively, and so to your point though, relative to scoring, I mean that's the objective, and so you have explosive players in this postseason, guys that are extremely talented, guys that are represented on the Pro Bowl, the All-Pro team, whether it's at running back, quarterback, receiver, tight end. But the same thing I would say on defense, and I think that generally when the season's over with, the best team wins, and that's not just in one area.
Sean, you were
evaluating the team already once. How much self-scouting do you do this week? Do you do more than normal, or just?
Yeah, well, look, the bye gave us a good chance to self-scout. You know, in other words, look closely at, in fact, a lot of self-scout. That's the benefit of that week. You know, that week that you're not playing. Playing a team again in the postseason. I think I said this last week. It's pretty common. It feels like, you know, it was a long time ago from a standpoint of when we played them last. But you know, at this stage of the season, you have 16 regular season games. You have last week's postseason game. And in some cases, you can go back to last year even. You know, the staffs were similar. We played them, you know, in Los Angeles. And so all the film's there at your disposal to do what you want with it. And now it's trying to manage that, put it together, and put together the best plan offensively, defensively, in the kicking game, just like, you know, they're doing right now.
Sean, you heard.
Well, you try not to. You try to really look closely at, you know, what are the things that you feel like fit, and you know, making sure there's not too much. You know, guys are playing fast and they know what to do.
Sean, you said you heard Marcus Peters' comments. Any comment on that?
No, listen, he's someone that we grew real close to in the evaluation process. He's from the Bay Area. I used to recruit, you know, that area where he went to high school, and he's someone that we came close to drafting him. You know, the year we took Andrus, one of our goals going into that draft was Pete and Peters, and that's the truth. So I have great respect for him, and it was all good.
So you said you didn't like seafood. Do you like gumbo?
I'm okay with it. I mean, it's just, I'm more of a Midwestern, like, steak and potato guy.
Was there something about his matchup with Thomas that y'all liked?
No, we got a lot of man in that game, and honestly, a lot more man maybe than even expected. You know, we've seen more zone in the last, you know, 5 or 6 weeks from these guys on defense. Wade does a great job. He'll mix things up. You know, he'll give you a 4-man rush. He'll give you a 5-man rush. So very quickly as the game unfolds, you got to begin to pay attention to how you think you're getting defensed. And the same thing kind of relative to the Eagles last week. You know, from the prior game, there was a certain plan that's not uncommon. You know, for the second time around, each side of the ball with both teams to look at new wrinkles, and the key is quickly seeing it and then making the adjustments.
Sean, as an offensive guy, what are some of the things that stand out when you watch them on offense?
Man, they're precise. Their tempo. They give you a lot of things that, you know, the very, very beginning. And Sean, you cut his teeth under John Gruden. I cut my teeth under John Gruden. You know, plays that start off looking the same that are different. You know, I remember that, hearing that 100 times. And you know, Sean's taking his spin on it. They give you a lot of reduced splits, you know, and they get access by doing that. It's harder to press some of those guys. They're very precise in what they're doing. They're outstanding in the run game. Aaron Cromer's a close friend of mine. He's their line coach. He was here. You know, so they're talented and extremely well coached.
Sean, you guys auditioned so many different running backs in that sort of number 2 role during the first 4 weeks. What is it about Mark Ingram that made him so difficult to replace?
Well, it's a good question. I think, you know, we had a handful of players for those first 4 games, and then, you know, inevitably, you know, all these games are important, right? I mean, week 2 is important, is as important as week 15, and so, you know, we had to be careful, and I don't know how well we did, but we had to be careful not to use Alvin too much, you know, and so we, you know, had to have that balance. But Mark's been someone who's extremely familiar with what we do in the third down, in the nickel, in the base. There's not one thing I'm looking at this call sheet where I'm saying, you know, that ability to use either back is extremely beneficial and much easier on you when you're calling plays. But when it's got to be specific and all of a sudden, let's say you lose one of the backs for 10 minutes, or then, you know, it just forces you to be a little bit more one-dimensional.
Now, what do you admire about the way he handled?
He was outstanding.
Years
Look,
of his career that weren't going.
he's been outstanding. He got nicked up, but man, he's been, you know, that first round back in 11 with Cam, and then trading back in with Mark has paid dividends.
Sean, when you were evaluating Michael Thomas in the draft process, what made you think he'd be special?
His run after the catch. He was extremely physical, hard to bring down. You know, so you had a limited, like each year, you're trying to get as much information as you can, and so you have a limited exposure relative to game tape. But man, he ran with the ball well in his hands. I liked his size and his strength, and you know, he was the guy we felt was the best receiver in that draft. And I think it turns out we were right.
League leading 125 catches, just 3 drops in the regular season. Why is he so efficient with the ball, and what is he doing?
He's got strong hands in traffic, so he can, you know, he's not someone that needs his body to catch the football. He can catch it correctly, thumbs together, extended. He can catch it. His radius, you know, is extremely large. He's someone that is physical at the line of scrimmage. He's, you know, I told that story before about going out there on Thursdays and just playing a little bump and run, you know, simulating what we get on third down. And you know, I've done that over the years with Marcus Colston and Lance and all those guys. We've had Meacham and Devery Henderson. And there was one day I was out there doing that, and I'm telling you, he took a release and I had a finger pointing sideways. I had a chest bruise. I felt like I was just in an automobile accident, and that was the last time.
Sean, how do you feel like the people that you guys brought in the offseason with free agent signings have helped you guys get from where you were last season to where you are?
I think it's been a big part of it. I think we're in that talent procurement business, and so, well, how can we do it? Through the draft, and then, you know, for us to sign some key free agent players. I think we got talented football players, and I also think we got leadership that has been a big part. All those things together, a big part of being in this position.
Sean, Tyron Walker's back. What, did y'all get a hold of him?
Well, we had four or five guys work out. In fact, Tyron, you know, he's bounced around. He was in L.A. We've worked him out before. He was in good shape. So we'll see how he gets up to speed this week.
How tough is it losing Sheldon for a game like this against a team that runs
Well,
so
it's tough to lose. He's not arguing. He's had his best season here as a Saint. So you know, you don't want to lose starters like that. And he's playing extremely well. So, but listen, that's the challenge, and keep going.
Sorry.
That's all right.
If you could bear with me for a second. I guess 3 years ago we had the big press conference where you and the organization recommitted to each other, and then since then the draft classes, the free agent classes have created a lot of what we see right now. Is it? I mean, am I building a bridge to nowhere, trying to connect the dots and saying that was kind of where this team started, and maybe your second chapter started?
Well, look,
with that day.
I don't look that.
Or just kind of.
No, I think, look, in 06 we had a draft that was very important to turning the tide, if you will. In that draft in 06, you know, when you say Bush and it was Harper came with Jeff Fain also in a trade. You know, then you go Jari Evans in the 4th round, and he also came with Hollis Thomas for, you know, a season or two. And then you go Ninkovich in the 5th round, who played forever. We just didn't have the right vision. And then you go to the 7th round and get Streif and Colston. I mean, those are building blocks, and I feel like all those players who we saw last weekend, many of those players and other players that were on those teams, you know, 06, 7, 8, 9, all through 11, A lot of those guys are back now. It's great to see them. But to your question, man, that next draft that we needed and the next group of free agents that really sparked our turnaround last season, and then where we're at this season, you know, there's 3 players left from '09, you know, and so that's our league, and you know, it's those decisions have served us well, and you know, hopefully that continues. I feel a pause. All right, thank you.